Good morning. You may begin.
Good morning and great to be with you all. Thank you, Sheila, for moderating this very well organized panel. We go to a lot of these things as candidates, and to have one this well organized is a gift. So thank you for that. Good morning to Church Without Walls. Grateful for the opportunity to talk to you. So my name is Titus Benton, and I'm running for the state Senate in District 17, much of West Houston, stretching from the Galleria out to Katy along I-10, mostly north, some south, north of Westheimer as well, and then going down to Fort Bend County, right about around Eldridge. So if you live in those neighborhoods, I'm your guy. I'm running for the state Senate to do the same thing I've always done in my career, which is to love my neighbor. I was a student pastor for a tick over 15 years, working with junior high and high school kids and their families to improve their lives. I was a nonprofit founder working here in Texas and in the United States and even around the world to fund programs in vulnerable communities in need of clean drinking water, schools, working with folks that had tremendous healthcare needs. And that was, again, just out of a love for my neighbor and wanting to improve the lives of communities. So politics is another way to do that. I think politics is a lousy way to fulfill the Great Commission and try to make more believers. But I think it's the perfect way to fulfill the Great Commandment and to love people. And so it's not about power for me. It's not about position. It's about people. And so I'm excited to think about things like healthcare and education and economics and criminal justice. Currently, I'm a chief operating officer of an anti-human trafficking nonprofit.
15 seconds.
Think about public safety all the time. So that's what I want to do in the state Senate, and I look forward to answering your questions.
Thank you, candidate Titus Benton. Okay, and that concludes our candidate introductions from the Texas Senate race. Our third race is the Texas House of Representatives, and we have 4 candidates today with us. So we will begin with District 132, candidate Cameron Campbell. Okay.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. My name is Cameron Campbell. Everyone knows me as Coach Cam. I am your Houston Texans play safe coach. I also have a background in high school as a head coach athletic director at a local high school. I'd like to start by saying, thank you, Sister Wolf and Brother Caldwell, for putting this together. The effort and work that it took to make this happen, I'm deeply appreciative. I think the thing I'm most appreciative of is next year marks my 25th anniversary as a member of the Church Without Walls. So the impact that the church has had on me, on my faith, on my values, really just shadows my career. So very excited to see, to be on the other side of this. And so very excited to see, the seeds that were planted from 290 all the way to Queenston. I grew up here in House District 132. I went to Cy Springs High School. I'm a Cy-Fair ISD graduate. Proud University of Houston Cougar, go Cougs. I played football at the University of Houston. And as I mentioned earlier, the game of football has been extremely good to me and it's opened a number of different doors. And this is one of them. One of the things that I've learned, not only at the Church Without Walls, but just in life, is the concept of being a servant leader and providing an opportunity to provide service to others when needed. So last year, while sitting on my couch, I was reading Benjamin Franklin's biography. I put the phone down. I looked up and it was January 6th. And, I went from feeling extremely high and thinking that our young democracy could find its way back on track to feeling extremely low. And, that there was clearly a lack of leadership at the national, state, and local levels. And there was opportunity to provide and serve. And so ultimately for me, being a coach, I mapped out all of the effective leaders that were in my area and, looked around and found where leadership was lacking and where there was inadequate leadership. And I found this race.
15 seconds.
That's what brings me here to earn your vote as state representative in House District 132. Coach Cam, thank you.
Thank you, Coach Cam. Okay. From District 138, we have 2 candidates. I will ask candidate Lacey Hull from District 138 to speak first. Candidate Lacey Hull, give you a chance to appear. Okay, I will come back to candidate Lacey Hall. Candidate Stephanie Morales.
Good morning.
We'll give a second for, okay. And candidate Stephanie, before you speak, may I confirm, let me check the participants. Is candidate Lacey Hall with us right now? Okay, I don't see her listed. Okay, so she may appear a little bit later. Okay, thank you, candidate Stephanie Morales. You may begin.
Thank you so much. And thank you so much for having me here this morning. My name is Stephanie Morales, and I'm running for state representative for District 138. I'm not originally from the Houston area. I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley to a school teacher mom who was a single parent. I made my way to Houston through Texas A&M University, where I majored in biology and was a member of a tiny little thing called the Fighting Texas Aggie Band, where I was a snare drummer. And I was also a commander of a special unit and had the privilege of leading freshman cadets to a tiny little Bible study called Breakaway, which, if y'all know, it's where thousands of college kids get together to worship every Tuesday night at Texas A&M University. I came to Houston to go to law school. I attended law school at South Texas College of Law. After I graduated law school, I went to go work at the Harris County District Attorney's Office. But because I am not a stranger to hard work, while I was a district attorney, I decided to go back for a third degree when I earned my master's in law from the University of Houston in international law. I decided to run for this office because I've been a volunteer in my community for a really long time. I've been a volunteer of the Houston Rodeo, driving golf carts and trams for 9 years. And I've been a member of Houston's First Baptist Church for 7 years, where I work in the preschool ministry and am the prayer coordinator for my Life Bible class. And so I felt a need to run for this district, that this district needed some competent representation. And I prayed about it, and
15 seconds.
When God tells you to abide him and to do something, you do it. And so I threw my hat in the ring, and here I am running to represent all of the people of this district. So I hope that I have y'all's support in this. Thank you so much.
Thank you, candidate Morales. Our fourth candidate today in the Texas House of Representatives to introduce herself is candidate Lily Tron. We'll give her a second to adjust her camera.
Yes, I'm ready.
Okay, you may begin.
Hi, my name is Dr. Lily Trung, and I'm currently is ALEAF, ISD Board Trustee. And I'm running for State Representative District 149. The reason I want to run because I think I can do a lot more when I'm in the state and helping for public education. And I am currently the member of Ascension Chinese Catholic Church Pastoral Council for 19 years. And then I'm on the Finance Committee right now. For more than 22 years, I've been serving in the community. I love to go around and help family that have autism kid, and that's what my special lies in. And thank you so much for having me in this morning. And thank you, Ms. Wolf. Thank you, Mr. Cardwell, for inviting me on this forum. And thank you, Church Without the Wall. And I run to that church a lot, and I was like, wow, you know. So thank you for having me in the forum. And I'm married I have 3 children and I have 2 grandbaby, a grandson, Carter, and a grandbaby, Mia. And that's why my passion is I want to help the community to do a good job, to help with education, because that's our future, and for crime. And there's a lot more that I would like to do. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so that completes our introductions of all of our candidates. So today we have 8 who have made introductions. But again, I will repeat that we will have some who will need to leave because of conflicting schedules. So I will make adjustments on the rotations as we proceed. Since we've had practice with introductions and an order set, for round 1, we will continue with the same order. On round 2 and the next rounds, I will rotate the candidate races, State Board of Education, Texas Senate, Texas House of Representatives, and I will also rotate the candidates within those races. Okay, so I will also mention that when most of you registered, you had an opportunity to ask questions. So in today's chat, we have people who are posting questions, but also at the time of registration, there were some questions posted. Our Social Justice Committee is monitoring the chat as we proceed, and also monitoring the question and answer box. We will go ahead and go through the rounds of questions first. And with time permitting, we will then address some of the questions from the chat posted today, and then also questions that were submitted at time of registration. If time permits, we will allow a closing from each candidate that will be 1 minute. And let me back up. As the candidates answer the questions, I will ask the question first, and then they will be given 1 minute to respond. Okay, we're going to begin with the State Board of Education and District 6, candidate Michelle Palmer. Okay, first question. And after I ask the question, you may begin responding, and our timer will begin timing you when you first begin to speak. Okay, the Texas School Board recently decided to delay consideration of a new social studies curriculum until 2025. Do you think the social studies curriculum needs to be changed?
I absolutely believe it needs to be changed. The entire reason that I started running for this position in 2019 is because of the social studies curriculum. There are a lot of problems, particularly the 8th grade social studies curriculum, which is the first half of U.S. history through the Civil War, is very problematic. There are a lot of factual inaccuracies and a lot of propaganda in that particular grade level. I would like to see it be more inclusive, as I mentioned in my introduction. We have a lot of problems in our social studies curriculum, particularly. My opponent also removed
15 seconds. Sorry.
climate change from the science curriculum so before adopting textbooks. So we also need to adjust others, but particularly the social studies curriculum. That's definitely the most important.
Thank you. I will ask the same question of candidate Daniel Hockman. Okay. Give a second for him to appear. Okay. Candidate Hockman. The Texas School Board recently decided to delay consideration of a new social studies curriculum until 2025. Do you think the social studies curriculum needs to be changed?
100%. In order to not repeat what Michelle said, the social studies curriculum in Texas is woefully behind the times. It hasn't been changed for over a decade. It 100% needs to be changed, as Michelle said, to be more inclusive of the groups of students that are now failing in Texas. They're failing because they don't feel like they belong and they don't feel like they're cared about. When you rewrite history to protect one group of children from feeling bad about themselves, you're telling that other group of children that they do not matter. And in my purview, that's 100% unfair. And it is a good reason why those children feel like they're failing in Texas schools.
15 seconds.
Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you. Okay, we will move to the Senate race, and we have questions directed for that. We will begin with Misty, candidate Misty Bishop, followed by candidate John Whitmire, and followed by candidate Titus Benton. Okay, so candidate Misty Bishop, and I'm looking, I don't think your camera is on yet. Oh, wonderful. Okay, great, great. Okay, so the question. There have been several changes to Texas voting laws. Do you support additional changes?
First of all, a lot of the bills that have been passed constantly, I say for a while now, for the past, ever since the pandemic, it has been very suppressive to most people that are considered to be underprivileged, oppressed, as I would characterize that, where, you know, we have a hard time trying to get to the polling locations. They do change. And then, of course, you know, having certain type of identifications in order to vote. Now, I know when you do take the time to get your voter ID card, that should be good enough. And then if you already registered and when you go in
15
there
seconds.
and you let people know that this is who you are, it should not be any type of restriction. And then when it comes to the mail-in ballots, that's another bill that I disagree with how they handle things. So, no, I do not support those.
Stop. Okay, you must stop. Thank you. Okay. Now, candidate Whitmire, candidate John Whitmire. Is he still with us or has he left? Okay. Candidate John Whitmire mentioned that he had a conflicting event and that he would have to leave. So we will move on to candidate Titus Benton. Candidate Benton.
Yes, ma'am, I'm here.
Okay. Okay. The question. There have been several changes to Texas voting laws. Do you support additional changes?
Yeah, first I would underscore what Misty has shared, which is many of the changes that have happened need to be reversed. You know, the rallying cry of a lot of that legislation was we were trying to make it easier to vote and harder to cheat. We made it harder to vote and no harder to cheat. So it's legislation that I don't support. I also think when we talk about voting rights, one of the things that we don't talk enough about is the practice of gerrymandering. I'm running against the chair of the redistricting committee, and those districts are being challenged in the courts right now. A hearing coming up in El Paso. The DOJ is looking into some of those districts because they've been drawn unfairly, and at least our government and our court system thinks they've been drawn.
15 seconds.
Yes. And so we have got to get independent commissions setting districts in Texas to have fair elections in Texas.
Thank you. Okay, so that completes the responses from the Texas Senate race for round one. We now will hear from our candidates from the Texas House of Representatives. And it looks like we have 3 instead of 4 candidates, but we will move on with that. Okay, so candidate Cameron Campbell. We will ask from District 132. We'll ask you to speak first.
Thank you. So I'll pick up where Titus left off.
Okay, and let me re-ask. Okay, I'll ask the question each time. Okay, so there have been several changes to the Texas voting laws, and do you support additional changes? Okay, and you can begin.
Thank you. So I'll pick up where Titus left off. Nobody enjoys gerrymandering. When gerrymandering is done, what it essentially means is elected officials get to handpick their constituents instead of the constituents handpicking their elected officials. So not only do we need to correct and address gerrymandering laws, the other thing is we have to take a look at the harmful damage that SB 1 that was passed this last session did to Black and brown voters, and making, again, ballot boxes more restrictive. And the other thing we have to also take into consideration is Texas has the most restrictive voting laws in the entire country. House District 132 has 3 of the 10 fastest growing zip codes in the entire country. And as I knock doors and speak to my soon-to-be constituents, some of them are baffled and confused by how strict and how prohibitive it is to even be able to vote. So to answer your question, we absolutely need to repeal some of the restrictive laws and also make sure that we address gerrymandering.
Okay, thank you. Okay, next, and I don't see candidate Lacey Hull present from District 138, but we do have from District 138 candidate Stephanie Morales. Okay, so candidate Morales. There we go. Okay, there have been several changes to Texas voting laws. Do you support additional changes? You may.
Yes, thank you. And I will echo what everyone has said. The changes that were made were very restrictive, and we do need to repeal those changes. In addition, we also need to make it easier to register to vote. I have been a deputy registrar, and so I've been registering people to vote for the past year. And it is really difficult to register people to vote. Everything has to be done by hand and delivered. A lot of other states have done electronic registrations, and it's worked. And with a state as big as Texas, we should move to that. And so I think that that's one of the changes that we need to make, is to move to electronic registering to vote, because it'll make things easier and more accessible
15 seconds
in our state. Thank you.
Okay, great. Okay, thank you. And candidate Lily Trom. Okay.
Hello, I'm back. I'm here.
Okay, there we go. Okay. Candidate Trom, there have been several changes to the Texas voting laws. Do you support additional changes?
Right now, I with the policy on the new law of voting, when I come in, I will look more into it. But right now, I like the way it is, because with me, when you go and vote, you have to have the ID. And like other candidates said that you need to be electronic. Yes, it can be electronic, but at the same time, have to make sure that that's the person that go and vote. So with me, you know, like once I get in, I look further into this, but right now I'm okay with the law. And if necessary, I will change to accommodate, to help with the people, especially in my district.
Thank you. Okay, so we have completed round 1. For round 2, I will rotate the position of the races that we hear from. So in round 2, we will begin with the Texas House of Representatives. They were last in round 1, so they will be first this go round. Followed by the Texas Senate races. And then last in round 2 will be the State Board of Education. Okay, so the Texas House of Representatives. And this time I am going to ask candidate Lily Trong to answer first. Candidate Cameron Campbell will be second. And candidate Stephanie Morales will be third. Okay, so candidate Lily Trong, you're first up. And the question is, what is your policy on school safety?
Okay, regarding to school safety, first of all, because I'm on the A-Leaf school board, so we work with the parent to make sure everything's safety for our children. And I like the way it is because we want to the parent get involved, and you know, we want to make sure the children get their safety. And also on the state legislative, I want to make sure that we have more funding for the school, so that way, you know, like I go to different school districts, I see how the new thing that they did is lock the door of every classroom, make sure that, you know, just in case somebody comes in, the safety of the children. But I would like to see more fence up around the facility. That way no one can really get into the school.
15 seconds.
Be more secure. So bottom line, we need more funding for the schools so that I can bring more safety for the children.
Thank you. Okay, candidate Cameron Campbell.
Thank you. So
What is your policy on school safety?
So my policy on school safety is pretty straightforward. And a lot of it comes from my background as a coach. You know, as a coach, it's your job to address things, not how you want them to be, but exactly how they are. So, you know, what Republicans have proposed is having one door in and one door out. You know, you think about South Springs High School, which is in our district, which has over 3,500 students. The idea of having one door to exit and enter out of a tragedy or an emergency just doesn't make sense. So what I propose is wraparound services to make sure that we address the entire situation, which includes having to bring in metal detectors if needed, including more counselors, ensuring they have counselors and additional staff and professionals on site, and including ramping up security and police if needed. The last thing I'll say in closing is we know that 70% of all of our teachers in Texas have considered quitting over the last year. So the idea of forcing our teachers to carry guns is absolutely not the answer. Instead, it's looking for proactive solutions to make sure we keep all of our babies safe.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Stephanie Morales, what is your policy on school safety?
Thank you. Thank you. I was 24 years old when I had to substitute teaching a 10th grade English class, when I had to explain to my students what Sandy Hook was. The call that I dread happening is to know that something happened to my mom and the 4-year-olds that she teaches. So school safety is extremely important to me. I think that the legislature needs to fund our schools, all of our schools. The only way that we're going to increase school safety is for the legislature to give our schools more money to have more police officers on campus, more money to build fences around our schools to make sure that random people can't just walk up to our schools, and more money to make sure that we have foyers in our schools so that when people walk into our schools, they have a place to go without actually
15 seconds.
going into our schools. These little things can make a big difference in keeping our schools safe, but that comes from the legislature funding our schools first. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so continuing with round number 2, we will now move to the Texas Senate races. We will begin with candidate Titus Benton, followed by candidate Misty Bishop. Okay, candidate Titus Benton, what is your policy on school safety?
Thank you. In an effort to not be redundant, I would just emphasize what Cam and Stephanie have just shared around funding and some practical steps on security and flow of traffic through schools and all those things. But I think at a fundamental level, safe schools exist in safe communities. And what we know is that in Texas, since permitless carry passed, mass shootings are up 62%. We know we've got 4 of the 10 biggest mass shootings in the history of our country in Texas. We don't have safe communities because we aren't passing legislation that fosters safe communities. When anyone can carry a weapon without any training, we are asking for trouble. And we've seen that happen tragically again and again in our schools. To push schools to the forefront of this conversation and to make our kids a guinea pig about public safety is a tragedy. And it starts upstream from the conversation about schools and talking about community safety overall. And so we've got to pass legislation to make our communities more safe if we want our schools to be more safe.
Thank you. And candidate Misty Bishop, what is your policy on school safety?
Well, I always talk about that with the members of my campaign and anyone who knows me. Safety is our priority, because dealing with, what we have been dealing with for the past, I said 2 to 3 years, like what Benton was saying, we first got to change the laws dealing with, the permitless carry. I just can't get over that. But the first thing that I would do when it comes down to education is to put out the academic shield. And in the academic shield, it will not only protect the safety, but it also protect the safety dealing with natural disasters and the pandemics. And I would put in place that we will have more funding. And like the other candidates expressing, we need to have more funding where we have cameras and more law enforcement on campus, and make sure we practice and what we preach when we make sure that all people that come in have the proper ID.
Thank you. Okay, that completes round 2 for the Texas Senate candidates. We will now move to the State Board of Education. And in round 2, we will have candidate Daniel Hockman first, and then candidate Michelle Palmer second. Okay, so candidate Hockman, we have seen an increase in the number of books banned by local school districts. What is the state policy on the banning of books in the Texas public schools?
Hi, yes, so book banning, in my opinion, is nothing short of fascism. And it needs to stop. The state put out guidelines for districts, but the districts are not required to follow those guidelines. And in those guidelines, they utilize the Supreme Court case, State Board of Education versus PICO, I believe, and in 1982 established profanity, obscenity in books. Essentially, what the TEA recommends to districts is that they provide a panel made up of board members, parents, and teachers to examine any book that is protested by a parent. If that book is found to be suitable, it goes back into the library. If the book by the panel is not found to be suitable, then the book is removed. This book banning must stop. We're supposed to be protecting kids and giving them a chance at understanding education, who they are, not removing those from them.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, and candidate Michelle Palmer. We have seen an increase in the number of books banned by local school districts. What is the state policy on the banning of books in the Texas public schools?
Dan explained the guidelines pretty well. I've spent much of the last year attending school board meetings in the district, in District 6, speaking against bans. There are several school districts in District 6 in Northwest Harris County and in Montgomery County where they are the worst offenders in the state at banning books. My classroom library, even as a social studies teacher, includes a lot of fiction because I want students to read. And it's very diverse books. A lot of the books that are on various books lists are sitting in my classroom for my students to check out.
15 seconds.
School districts need to be a little less quick to ban them, and parents should be required to read them in full before they challenge those books.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so that completes round number 2, candidates. With round number 3, we will begin with the candidates from the Texas Senate, followed by responses from the Texas House of Representatives, and then responses from the State Board of Education. Okay, so the House of Representatives went first in round 2, and we are asking the Texas Senate to go first in round 3, and then we will hear from the State Board of Education. We will ask candidate Titus Benton to respond first, and then candidate Misty Bishop to respond second from the Senate. Candidate Benton, what kind of policy would you support to address handgun violence?
Yeah, you can probably tell from my last answer, this is an issue for which I have a great deal of passion. I am a Moms Demand Action Gun Sense endorsed candidate. This is something I think a lot about. And here's what we know. We know that there are broad pluralities of people who support universal background checks, red flag laws, safe storage laws, and even raising the age to purchase weapons in Texas. It is beyond the pale of reasonable that someone could wait until their 18th birthday, buy an AR-15, and go into a school and kill 21 people. And before you give me the argument that our folks in the military that are 18 can use those weapons, we know that they're trained, and we know they can't carry them wherever they want all over the base. And so if we're not going to raise the age, we've got to institute training again, and we've got to permit these weapons so we know whose hands they're going into. Those are some of the policies I would support.
Okay. Thank you. Candidate Misty Bishop, what kind of policy would you support to address handgun violence?
Like my former fellow colleague Benton said, you know, when it comes down to gun reform, we need to really truly restrict individuals who are not capable of handling a gun. And one way we need to put in place, and like I said, I always express to people, I don't want to take away your Second Amendment rights. That's the first thing I want to say. However, you know, giving a AR-15 to an 18-year-old is not the answer. We need to have more red flags. We need to have universal background check. And we need to put in place, like we had in place once before, a license to carry a weapon. And I even want to take it to the extreme that we do a psychology type testing
15
what
seconds.
the person mindset is when they do purchase a gun. I know that could be extreme, but the way things have been done, we need to really truly protect our lives, and definitely our children's lives.
Okay, thank you. And we will now move from the Texas Senate race to the Texas House of Representatives. We will hear from candidate Stephanie Morales first, candidate Lily Trong second, and candidate Cameron Campbell third. Okay, that being said, candidate Morales, what kind of policy would you support to address handgun violence?
Yes, thank you. Having been a former Harris County DA and now representing kids and juveniles in court, I know how easy it is for people to get guns and for criminals to get guns. I myself have a concealed handgun license that I got when I was a DA for personal safety. And I believe that if you're going to have a gun, that you should have a concealed handgun license. Those classes are extremely valuable and they teach you how to use your gun. And when you learn how to use your gun, we stop all of these random shootings that we have where people are shooting at cars and things like that. I am also the Moms Demand Action Gun Sense candidate in this race because I believe in sensible gun laws. I think that at a minimum, we need to
15 seconds.
I think at a minimum, we need to raise the age to buy a gun to 21. And that's what we need to do at a minimum to make sure that we have things in place to stop these tragedies that keep happening. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. We will now hear from candidate Lily Trong. What kind of policy would you support to address handgun violence?
With me, because I agree that we need to raise the age, they can purchase the handgun, and of course they have to go through the training. And on top of it, I do agree that whoever bought the handgun, they need to go through mental health, to look into to see what the background is, because I see a lot of shooting is the person that's shooting have an issue with the mental health most of the time. And to me, the age should be more than 21, because I believe that if they are around 25 years old,
15 seconds.
And they know what they're doing, then they're 21 years old. Thank you.
Thank you. And candidate Cameron Campbell, what kind of policy would you support to address handgun violence?
Well, when it comes to handguns, I've been impacted directly. I share with you that I've been a member of the Church Without Walls for 25 years. What moved my family from South Park to Cypress area, my first encounter with a gun was 5 years old. I was getting off a bus, and one of my classmates who was older than me put a gun in the back of my head and told me I had to run home, and he would shoot me in the back of the head. That experience was jarring, and it impacted my life. And as I said, it moved my family from the other side of town. So when it comes to addressing guns, it's very simple, right? So what we understand for sure is if we need a license to drive a car, if we need insurance to drive a car, if we need a license to buy certain grades of paint and insurance to buy certain grades of paint, if we need insurance and license to manage people's money, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense that we require a license and insurance for those who carry guns. And the reason that insurance is important is you think about the travesty in Uvalde, you think about the travesty in El Paso, those families, once those prayers and wishes are gone, have nothing. Their children are gone.
Okay, thank you. So that completes round 3 for the Texas Senate and the Texas House of Representatives. Okay, so moving now to the Texas State Board of Education for round 3. We will begin with candidate Michelle Palmer and then hear from candidate Daniel Hockman second. Okay, candidate Palmer, what is the role of schools in addressing the mental health status of children and teachers?
Well, schools are where both of those groups of people spend a large percentage of their lives. So if schools are not going to work to better the mental health of both students and teachers, then, and the state definitely isn't, then who's going to? I know that in my district, social emotional learning is a huge part of what we do professional development on. Trying to make sure that not only the teachers are protected, their mental health is protected, but that we know how and have the tools to protect the mental health of our students. We do trainings on
15 seconds.
prevention, spotting depression, anxiety every single year. And it's incredibly important that we do, because we are oftentimes the first line of defense for those things.
Thank you. Okay, and we now will hear from candidate Daniel Hockman. Candidate Hockman, what is the role of schools in addressing the mental health status of children and teachers?
Mental health cannot be overemphasized. Part of the problem with school shootings is that mental health isn't being properly addressed. To repeat what Michelle said, social emotional learning is a gateway for students to be able to understand themselves, understand how to properly deal with what they're feeling and thinking in a constructive manner, as opposed to increasing their anxiety and depression. I believe that every school system, every school district should have mental health counselors, trained and licensed mental health counselors and or psychiatrists that work with the school districts inside the schools to help students that are struggling and suffering. But not just students, teachers as well. In my school, our social emotional learning
15
chair
seconds.
also addresses teachers as well as students. And these services should be free of charge and accessible by every student and teacher in a district. Thank you.
Thank you. Candidates, we have now completed round 3 for all 3 races. We will now move to round 4. And we're hoping that we can complete round 5 also, and then hear closing statements from the candidates. After the closing statements, we will address questions from the chat and questions that are posted in the Q&A box. Okay, so that being said, we have 3 categories of races. So we are going back now to the State Board of Education for round 4, where we will begin, followed by the Texas House of Representatives, and then third, the Texas Senate. For the State Board of Education, this time we'll hear from candidate Hockman first, and then candidate Palmer. Okay, so that being said, candidate Hockman, what are the challenges facing public education policy in Texas public schools?
That's a very complex question. However, in 1 minute, the biggest challenge I see is that the right side of the aisle is truly trying to dismantle public education. In fact, that is their stated goal. And in doing so, they're using the word schools of choice to decrease funding to public schools and increase funding to voucher programs for charter and private schools. I believe that this movement to voucher programs is a monster challenge that needs to stop, because that funnels money directly out of taxpayer pockets to send children to charter schools and private schools on the dime of rural districts who don't have those options. And those schools have been
15
shown
seconds.
at the most to be neutral to public education, if not failures to public education. The dollars need to stay in public education and not handed out to for-profit institutions of learning. Thank you.
Thank you. Continuing in the State Board of Education race, we now will hear from candidate Michelle Palmer. What are the challenges facing public education policy in Texas public schools?
They are numerous. Dr. Hockman definitely mentioned several of them. In addition, just the complete and utter underfunding by the state of education. I would also like to add that not agreeing to expand Medicaid is a problem for education, because so many of our students are not on any kind of insurance. They don't go to the doctor when they're sick. They either come to school sick and make others sick, or they're out for long periods of time because they have trouble getting over whatever it is, even if it's not COVID. It's a real problem. Poverty in this state is one of the highest. Mental health in this state, we
15
are
seconds.
lowest funding on mental health, and anxiety and depression in our schools is a major problem. So there are a lot of policy failures that are affecting education.
Okay, thank you. That completes round 4 for the State Board of Education. We now will move to the Texas House of Representatives race. And we will hear first from candidate Stephanie Morales, followed by candidate Lily Trong and candidate Cameron Campbell. Okay, beginning with candidate Stephanie Morales. What steps would you take to address health inequity for people of color and other marginalized groups?
Yes, thank you. Maternal mortality rates are the highest in Harris County than they are in all of Texas and throughout the country. One of the things that we have to address is we have to make health care accessible and affordable for our communities. HD 138 is one of the most diverse districts in all of Texas. It has a Hispanic majority. It has the only Korean American population, and it has a large African American population as well. And in order to make sure that we have access to healthcare, we have to bring healthcare to our communities. We have to have healthcare in the community, healthcare that is accessible and affordable for every single one of our constituents. That's why I'm running for office, to make sure that we put
15 seconds.
To make sure that we put people over politics and that we take care of our people in our districts. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now we will hear from candidate Lily Trong. What steps would you take to address health inequity for people of color and other marginalized groups?
Yes, in my district, 149, we have a very diversity group. And of course, I want to do whatever I can to bring the healthcare to the people, to get better healthcare for them. And, everybody should be get taken care of. And, also is a funding involved in the healthcare to help with it. I can give you example like Hope Clinic. They open up and they serving the people around my district. And they did a wonderful job. And of course, we want to make sure that, those area can continue to help with the people in the district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And now, candidate Cameron Campbell. What steps would you take to address health inequity for people of color and other marginalized groups?
So the first thing that we know for sure, and this is data validated, we know that Black women will suffer disproportionately under SB 8 as it stands now. Because House District 132 has 3 of the 10 fastest growing zip codes in the entire country, you think about what people's perception of Katy and Cypress is beyond Sealy and Brookshire and all these other towns. If we fail to expand healthcare and Medicaid, ultimately the hospitals, the emergency rooms, the urgent care clinics that we have now, and we're fortunate to be able to get our kids into those places with relatively short wait times, if any, those spaces are ultimately going to be taken up by the folks who live in those rural pockets, going back to Dr. Hosmer, right? So making sure that we advocate for everybody that's impacted, not just in the best interest and special interest of a handful.
Y'all got these things basically separated in parts.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and again, I'm going to ask if your mic will remain on mute unless you're speaking. I hear just a little conversation in the background. Okay, so continuing in round number 4, I can still hear a little talking in the background. Continuing with round number 4, the Texas Senate race. We will ask candidate Misty Bishop to speak first, then candidate Titus Benton. Okay, candidate Bishop. What steps would you take to address health inequity for people of color and other marginalized groups?
Well, first of all, I did really explain my district, District 4. It is a pivotal district. And the reason why I said that is because I'm stretched out from Montgomery County all the way to Chambers County. So I have 5 counties. So my constituents, of course, there are some that have insurance, and then there's those who are low income and poverty stricken, like especially in the rural areas, that are trying to make ends meet and be on Medicaid and Medicare. And here in Texas, of course, they have tried their best to not expand Medicaid. And in order for us to take care of that, as your candidate and hopefully your future senator, is that I would propose that we would spend Medicaid. And for those who are able to afford any type of insurance, that we'll make sure we'll pick up the Affordable Act insurance to take care of everyone, so everyone will receive the same exact treatment.
Okay, thank you. We'll now hear from candidate Titus Benton. What steps would you take to address health inequity for people of color and other marginalized groups?
Thank you. I'm really passionate about this issue. My wife is a nurse practitioner at a charity clinic here in Katy. She comes home every day with stories of people who need access to care and simply can't get it, partly because so much of the insurance system in our state revolves around employment and getting insurance through your employer. It's going to sound like there's an echo in here, but we got to expand Medicaid in Texas. It's the moral thing to do. It's also the economically wise thing to do. And I think our Republican friends are coming around on that. So I'm excited about that. The way to get access into these communities, including rural communities, by the way, in which we've had a couple dozen rural hospitals close in the last 10 years. We've got to expand Medicaid to serve those vulnerable communities and give them the access to care that they need.
Thank you. Okay, candidates. That completes round 4. For round 5, I will ask one general question for all of the 3 races. I will begin with the State Board of Education, followed by the Texas Senate, and then the House of Representatives. Okay, so with the State Board of Education, this time we will hear from candidate Michelle Palmer first, and then candidate Hockman. And the general question is, and I am going to ask this of each candidate, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
My top priority would be to ask for a revote, to reconsider all of the work that the work groups did to change the social studies curriculum that was thrown in the garbage by the current State Board of Education when they decided to push off approval of the new curriculum to 2025. It is disrespectful to everyone who spent hundreds of hours and worked to make a more diverse, inclusive curriculum for the students of Texas, for the teachers of Texas. It's incredibly disrespectful, and I would ask for a vote to reconsider.
Thank you. Candidate Daniel Hockman, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
Thank you. My top priority would be actually as a science teacher and a scientist to make sure that the next generation science standards, which were created 13 years ago, are adopted in the state of Texas. We are woefully behind in science education, science, technology, engineering, and math education, as well as inclusiveness for diverse cultures in those classrooms. My fellowship at Rice University that I earned recently is looking at increasing that cultural diversity in STEM classrooms. And I think that is hugely important to the success and world competition ability of our students that are coming up in the world and becoming our future leaders in all of those areas. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Moving to the Texas Senate race, we'll hear from candidate Titus Benton first, then candidate Misty Bishop, and candidate Whitmire has left. Okay, so candidate Benton, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
I really appreciate this question, but the reality for anyone aspiring to be in the Texas State Senate is you don't get to pick one. We have multiple problems in our state, and we need leaders who can address multiple problems at once. So I guess if you're making me narrow it down to one, it would be this. We have to have leadership that's proactive instead of reactive. So we've really got a process problem that we need to fix. We need to elect people who are thinking 5-10 years ahead instead of 5 or 10 years behind. I want to bring leadership to the state Senate and not this sort of fear-based inclination to tell us who to be afraid of instead of telling us what problems they're going to solve. We need problem solvers in the state Senate, and that's who I want to be.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Misty Bishop, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
Like Benton has said, we have so much issues that we have to address, especially in the Senate. I'm a firm believer if we learn how to work together, we can be proactive instead of being more reactive. Anywhere from dealing with public education to women's rights. I'm all for the policing, holding people accountability of their actions. And then, of course, the voting rights, mental health, protecting the veterans as much as we can, because I know they really truly have sacrificed a whole lot for our country, and to see that they're not receiving what they're supposed to receive. And I'm just a firm believer. We have to have people that are willing to work for the people and not just work for our interests, but for everyone. And that's what I would bring to the table, and would love to join forces with others who are like-minded like me.
Okay, thank you. Okay, moving to the Texas House of Representatives, we will hear first from candidate Cameron Campbell, And then next candidate Stephanie Morales, followed by candidate Lily Trong. Okay, so candidate Campbell, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
So don't worry about stumbling over my name. I told my mom as a kid, she gave me a superhero name. Like if I don't make it playing ball, I should be fighting crime in my underwear or something. Like Cameron Campbell's a mouthful. So don't worry about it. My vision for Acadian Cypress is clear, and I call that program STEM 2.0. We all know that STEM stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. I believe we need to add an extra E for entrepreneurship. If we have the courage to teach our children entrepreneurship in our K through 12, number one, it builds a more resilient student. Number two, it fortifies as a true investment into our economy. Now, let's be clear. I'm not asking our teachers to do anything additional because Lord knows they do way too much. But if you think about when our education worked, when it was at its best, we had pastors and ministers up and down our schools. We had coaches, we had folks from the community who were a part of the school system. I think that we integrate small business owners and entrepreneurs into our education, and we use STEM 2.0 to make sure that we don't find another Jeff Bezos, but the next Jeff Bezos, but we ultimately find that person here in Acadian Cypress.
Okay, thank you. And candidate Stephanie Morales, what will be your top priority if you are elected?
Yes. So I am a CPS attorney and I represent kids in court every day. And I know how broken our CPS system is. And that is one of the reasons that I decided to run. So one of my top priorities is to fix the CPS system. So we don't have enough legislators that actually know and have been boots on the ground working in the CPS system. So I want to work with legislators on both sides of the aisle to make sure that our CPS system is actually working and that we don't have kids that are being trafficked in placements, that we don't have kids that are sleeping in offices. We need people that actually know what they're doing to fix the system because the system is absolutely 100% needed. My opponent has established an organization that wants to get rid of CPS altogether. And we know that CPS is important. We have to have an avenue to remove
15 seconds.
We have to have an avenue to remove children that are being harmed, but we need this avenue to function. And so we need legislators that are going to help fix the system. And so that is my top priority, to help fix the CPS system. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. And we will now hear from candidate Lily Trong. What will be your top priority if you are elected?
Of course, there's so much that we want to take care of, but my priority is, promote excellence in education, crime intervention, support the police, and the flooding in infrastructure improvement. Because beside that, there's much more to do. But my top priority is education. That's under mental health, education, curriculum, everything. So to me, I'm come from the education background. And also I work with, that's my passion. I love to help with the student and the school district. So that's one of my top priority. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so candidates, that completes round number 5. And I would like for us to address a few of the questions before we have our closing from the chat. I do have one question that has been submitted from the chat, and I am going to allow at least 1 or 2 questions that we can address. I'm looking at the time. And then I will allow 1 minute for each of you to give a closing. When you give your closing, you might want to describe the qualifications and experience that make you the best candidate for your political race. Okay, so from the chat, I will continue with rotating the order. We just finished with the State Board of Education. And then second was the Texas Senate, and then the Texas House of Representatives. We now will move to the Texas Senate, and then the Texas House, and then the Texas Board of Education. Okay, and then actually, I think I will keep that rotation for the closing statements. Okay, so if you all will listen to the question, and so this is a question that candidates had not heard before today. There is a teacher shortage in Texas. What is your plan to remedy this situation? And actually, that really should be addressed to the State Board of Education first. Okay, so I'm going to move down to the State Board of Education is what I'll do. I'll ask for a response from Daniel Hockman first, and then candidate Michelle Palmer. I'll repeat the question. There is a teacher shortage in Texas. What is your plan to remedy the situation? Candidate Hockman.
Thank you. This is a serious problem. This year, 43,000 teachers left Texas schools. The movement of Texas teachers away from education is multifaceted. One of those is obviously woefully underpaid teachers who all have bachelor's degrees, most have masters, and some like me have PhDs. And yet we are paid at the bottom of the scale of professionals. So teacher pay needs to reflect the professionalism and the hard work that teachers put in. Too many layers of administration, people with titles that really get paid a lot of money and do nothing in school districts. A bloated school district is not a friend of a teacher.
15 seconds.
Many administrators will tell the teacher over and over again. So it's a toxic environment for teachers, and that must stop. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, and let me just pause and ask from our Social Justice Committee. Okay, I see it. I was going to ask for a question for the second group. Okay, so still with the State Board of Education, candidate Palmer. There is a teacher shortage in Texas. What is your plan to remedy this situation?
Well, with the purview of the State Board of Education, there's not a lot that the State Board of Education can do. We can change the requirements for teacher certification. However, as a public education advocate, I've been advocating at the state legislature and state senate some things that could be done. Number one is the sheer amount of paperwork involved in being a teacher. It's really overwhelming. As Dr. Hockman mentioned, pay being higher would definitely help because we are the lowest paid, one of the lowest paid professions in the country. But the number of students that we are
15 seconds.
students we are required to teach because of funding on top of the amount of paperwork is really problematic and drives a lot of people out of the profession.
Thank you. Okay. And now a question specific for the House of Representatives and Senate. I will begin with the House of Representatives first. I'll ask candidate Lily Trong to respond first, followed by candidate Campbell, and then candidate Morales. Okay, so candidate Lily Trong. In light of the devastating impact of the freeze of February 2021, is the Texas electric grid secure?
Right now, I believe that, the grid is, somewhat secure, a little. There's need to be more done on this. If I got elected in, because that's one of the things that we have to look deeply into, to make sure that everything get done correctly. And because it's like, because the when it happened, no one can expecting it, but I believe that the state is doing a lot more to help to secure that won't happen again. And we need to, like I said, we need to do a more deeper into this and make sure.
Okay, thank you. Candidate Campbell. In light of the devastating impact of the freeze of February 21st, is the Texas electric grid secure?
So this is what we know. We know that when the freeze happened, not only did myself and my colleagues that are here on this call step in, I know myself personally, before I was even a candidate, I was out trying to provide resources, provide hotels and food for those who need it. It's very clear, what effective leadership looks like and what invisible leadership looks like. And that's a part of why we need to get, now I'm running for state representative at House District 132 and trying to create change. Not only did the person I'm about to beat not only fail to show up here in Katy and Cypress, he also failed to demand that the current governor have a special session to address the grid. The grid is in no better condition than it was previously. It hasn't been weatherized, and there are a handful of very basic processes that we can do to improve the grid. None of those have happened. So at the end of the day, the grid gets an F minus, and so is the person I'm about to beat. Vote Coach Cam, HD 132.
Okay, and Candidate Morales. In light of the devastating impact of the freeze of February 21st, is the Texas electric grid secure?
Thank you. The answer is pretty simple. It's not. The legislature did absolutely nothing to make sure that this grid was going to be secure. All they did was fight over abortion rights, over voting rights, and all of these other things that have absolutely nothing to do with putting our people first and making sure that our people are being taken care of. And that includes making sure that we have power, that our houses aren't flooding, and that we have our basic necessities. I was freezing cold. My dogs, I have 2 dogs that are completely covered in fur because they're Labradoodles, and they were cold. We had to go sit in the car because we were that cold during the freeze. And our legislature has absolutely failed
50 seconds.
Has absolutely failed us in trying to fix this grid. Nothing has been done. Nothing has been done about flooding in my district. And we have to have elected people that are going to start fixing these things.
Okay, and we will now hear from the Texas Senate. And then after that, I will go ahead and ask each candidate to make your closing statement and asking that it not be longer than 1 minute. We do have one candidate who will have to leave. He may have already left. So, we have flexibility. We will just proceed with those who are still present. Okay, so with the Senate race, we will begin with candidate Titus Benton, followed by candidate Misty Bishop. In light of the devastating impact of the freeze of February 21st, is the Texas electric grid secure? And that's directed to candidate Titus Benton.
Yeah, secure is a key word there, right? Because my answer is no. And some people's answer is, well, we think so. But if your answer is, well, we think so, then it's not secure. It's a question of infrastructure investment, whether it's freezes or floods. Again, we haven't had proactive leadership. We had a freeze in 2011. Warning bells were sounded. Nothing was done. Then we had 2021. And we should not forget that this is a matter of life and death. It's not just a matter of inconvenience. Hundreds of people lost their lives in the freeze. Winterization, weatherization, no brainer. Connecting to the national grid, no brainer. It would be an economic advantage for us to produce energy and sell it to the national grid when we have an abundance of it, which we do. In District 17, solar farms are going up left and right in Wharton County. We've got an opportunity to diversify the way we
15 seconds.
as an energy leader in this country. We're not ready for the next freeze, but we can be ready by taking those steps.
Thank you. And candidate Misty Bishop, in light of the devastating impact of the freeze of February 2021, is the Texas electric grid secure?
No, it is not. Like Mr. Benton said, and the rest of the candidates has stated, we really truly need to really need to work up on this. I am aware of some of the engineers who have been looking over this, have been investigating this, and based on what they're saying right now, as of today, if we go into blackout right now, it will be out of power for 100 days. And we cannot afford that, especially what we experienced in 2021. So yes, everyone who's here and hearing our voices today expressing concern about this, it will affect everyone in the state of Texas. So yes, we really truly need to look more into weatherization and funding and connect to the national grid. So yes, we need to correct this problem as soon as possible.
Thank you. And thank you to all of the candidates who have participated. We've had several who have had to leave, but we would like to set aside this time for those remaining to give a closing statement. We will continue in the order that we have just completed. And we're asking that your closing statement not be longer than 1 minute. And as I said before, you might want to describe the qualifications and experience that make you the best candidate in your political race. When we complete the closing statements, we will ask our coordinator of our social justice ministry to give any closing remarks or make any announcements. Also, at the end of our forum, the PowerPoint presentation that was viewed before our forum began, it will also be projected at the end of our session today for about 10 minutes after we finish. We thank you all for participating. Thank you for carving out the time. So we're now ready to listen to closing statements. We're going to continue in the order we started with the State Board of Education, followed by the Texas House of Representatives and the Texas Senate. I believe that our candidates from the State Board of Education both have had to leave, but let me confirm that. Okay.
I'm here.
Is candidate Palmer still here?
Yes.
Okay. And what about candidate Hockman?
No.
Okay. All right. Okay. So candidate Palmer, thank you again for being here. And we're going to ask you to take not more than 1 minute to make your closing statement. And we'll wait until, okay, you're on view now. Okay. All right. You may begin.
Hi, everyone. Again, thank you for joining this amazing event. There aren't a lot of times when all of the candidates for a position are invited to be heard and I definitely appreciate the opportunity. I think that I am the best candidate for this position because I'm the only one with any education experience. My opponent is a Shell Oil attorney, and his first act when he was elected in 2020 was to convince the rest of the board to remove climate change from the curriculum before adopting new textbooks. That goes against everything that is best for the students of Texas and for the future economy of Texas. Students need to understand the scientific causes of
15 seconds.
before they can fix the problem that we and the generations before us created. I very much appreciate any support you can provide me. My website is paulazed.com.
Thank you. Thank you for being here. Okay, closing statements now from the Texas House of Representatives. We will first hear from candidate Lily Trong, followed by candidate Cameron Campbell, and then candidate Stephanie Morales. Candidate Lily Trong. Let's give her a second. Okay, there we are.
Yes. First of all, I would like to thank you, the Church Without the Wall, for hosting the forum today and having us to express our sincere and what we like to do. And my passion, I do, a lot of social service over the past 22 years. And it's still my passion to go into the state and to work for the people, to do the best I can to help the people in Texas, especially District 149, to address all the issue. And my website is lilytexas.com. So if you want to know more about me, please go in my website. And again, I would like to thank you for everyone to listen to us. And thank you, the Church with the World, Pastor West, and Ms. Sheila Wolf. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome. Thank you for being here. Okay, candidate Cameron Campbell.
All right, so I'd like to close by saying, number one, thank you, Sister Wolf and Brother Caldwell for putting this together. Again, I know it's a labor of love for sure. Also, like to say thank you for Paz for his leadership in making this happen. I'm not a great status signaler. I think my body of work relatively speaks for itself. Again, as a person who grew up here in the Cypress area, I live in Katy. I'm a small business owner. I'm an award-winning small business owner. In 2021, my business won the Greater Houston's Black Chambers Award, the Pinnacle Award. I've also used my business to do great work. My scholarship, Turkey Drive, a Christmas Wishes program, all comes from commerce. And so, number one, providing and serving and leading for others is extremely important. One thing I always forget is one of my most proud accomplishments is not only being a father and a husband, but being an author. In 2019, I wrote my first book, Alpha Redefined, which is a book about servant leadership. The last thing I'll say ultimately is I've really enjoyed this experience. We've had Republicans on here, we've had Democrats agreeing and dissenting opinions. But the folks who aren't here is what sends a message. There's no way that you can lead our folks if you're unwilling to get in the game. That's why I'm asking for your vote. Coach Cam, State Representative, House District 132. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, and we'll ask candidate Stephanie Morales for her closing statement.
I want to echo what all of the other candidates have said. Thank you so much for having me, and thank you for putting on this very well organized forum. I am asking for your support today to run for this district for 138. I believe that I am the most qualified candidate because I show up. I am constantly there showing up. We have 4 different school districts in District 138, and I am at all of the school board meetings. I am at all of our community events with our veterans, with our kids, in everything that needs to be there. I am there because that's what a state representative needs to be. I hosted a backpack school supply giveaway because we have historically never had one in this district, and state representatives are usually the ones to host it. And so we decided we're going to do it because our community needs to do it. And so
15 seconds.
I'm a lawyer. I have a huge, very, very diverse background, and that's exactly what we need in the state legislature, because the legislators do have a huge role and they do lots of different things. And so we need someone with a diverse background, and that's me. So please support me. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Thank you. Okay, and then final closing remarks from our Texas Senate candidates. We will hear first from candidate Titus Benton, and then followed by candidate Misty Bishop. Candidate Benton, you may speak.
Yeah, thank you again, Church Without Walls. Really appreciate this. And thanks to my fellow candidates. This ain't easy what we're doing, but I appreciate y'all, learn from y'all. I'm encouraged to be in this process with each of you. Listen, what we're doing in Texas isn't working. We're sicker than we were 10 years ago. We're poorer than we were 10 years ago. We have a less resilient infrastructure. Our women have less rights. Our children are less safe. The reason that I'm qualified is because I'm coming at this from a position of public service as a pastor and nonprofit founder, currently that COO position in a nonprofit sector. I love my neighbor. I want to serve people. It's not about power. It's not about status. It's about serving my community and making it stronger. I agree with what Senator Whitmire said at the beginning. We got to lower our voices, work together. It's not about partisanship. It's about people. TitusForTexas.com. TitusForTexas.com. We can get connected. Looking forward to having your support. Thanks again.
Thank you. And finally, candidate Misty Bishop, if you will give your closing remarks.
Sure. I would like to say thank you so much, Church Without Walls, for inviting me to be on a forum with a group of people who I truly say are public servants. I got to say that. With the experience that I have, qualification might not line up with everybody else, but I am a paralegal by trade, and I'm still a student, as a matter of fact. I'm getting my doctorate degree in public administration at Liberty University. So I'm trying to get well equipped to be an effective and passionate policy maker, because I'm working for the people. Like I said, I'm not working for myself, and I'm not working just for my family. I'm working for everyone. It doesn't matter who you are, who you're affiliated with. We all are in this together. And that's why I started my nonprofit organization called We Are One. It's all about reviving, rebuilding, and rehabbing our communities. And we have to learn to work together in order to make progress. My name is Misty Bishop. I'm the Texas Senate District 4 Democratic candidate. You can reach me at www.misty4txsenate.com. Thank you, and God bless all of you.
Thank you. It has been my pleasure to serve as moderator today for our candidate forum, our virtual candidate forum for the Church Without Walls. The next voice that you're going to hear is our coordinator of our social justice ministry, Mr. Charles Caldwell. He will give closing remarks and announcements. After that, the PowerPoint video will show. It gives some educational information. A lot of times people have the question, well, what does a representative in the Senate do? What are their duties? The same thing for each of the race categories that we selected today. So you can view that. Also, important dates coming up. And of course, the most important date is November 8th. Not only do we want you to vote, but we want you to encourage those around you to go vote, make their voice heard. Okay. That being said, Brother Charles Caldwell.
Thank you, Sheila, for a great job. I just want a few closing remarks. I want to thank each participant for participating. We appreciate your time, your commitment, and your effort to be here this morning. We appreciate your answers and the information that you brought to us and to our congregation and to the community. Also, I just, again, want to thank our committee, our subcommittee, that was chaired by Sister Wolf. I want to thank each member, Sheila, Glenda, Delilah, Chauncey, Dorothy, and Tom, for the work that you did and your commitment to make this event go on. I want to thank Pastor Harris and not least of all, Pastor West, for making all of this possible. And as we close out this forum, I just want to remind everybody, October 11th is the last day to register to vote, to be eligible to vote in this year's general election on November 8th. So please register to vote, and most of all, go vote. Again, thank you participants for participating and sharing your Saturday morning with us. We appreciate it, and we look forward to meeting with you again at some point. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay. And Brother Caldwell, let me mention two other things. This was a recorded event, and you will be able to access the recording at the Church Without Walls website. And also, it's not too late. If you have a question, you may post it in the chat. We do want to thank Pastor West, Pastor Ralph Douglas West, for the opportunity to host this event for our community. Okay, thank you. And also, I wish you a good evening.
Again, just to remind you, you can look at the educational slide that we presented at the beginning. It will be presented again. So there's a lot of great information on it. Again, thank you, and have a blessed day.